referred as a kufr kafir. And
as you're walking in the street,
as
or outside your house?
walking the street, actually, my wife suffered it, my children suffered it.
And this is in Bradford.
This is in Bradford. In Islam, in black and white, it is agreed upon these 5 Islamic schools of thought, the ulema, that apostasy is worthy of death. They broke into the house, the vacant house next door, and actually they deliberately set the house on fire in the hopes that it would spread to my home. This sergeant, his words to me were, you don't belong there.
My gosh.
And
he said that?
Yeah, he told me to stop being a crusader and move out the area. And
oh my gosh. Welcome. Just to let you know, we talked at the very beginning of the year that we were going to try and broaden out what Soco Films was doing with regards to our content. We wanted to diversify the content and to expand the channel to include other things connected to the interaction between Christianity and Islam, between the church and the secular world, and so on. And you might have heard me mention in the past the story of a Christian convert from a Muslim background called Nissar, who suffered terribly for the choice to follow Christ. And here is Nissar. Nissar, welcome to Soco Films. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
It's good to meet you. We've already sent Nissar the questions, so he knows what questions we're going to be reading, and I'm literally going to read them off the screen. And we're going to just tell Nissar's story, and you guys can hear it as it unfolds. So to start off, Nissar, tell us a little bit about what it was like to grow up as a Muslim.
Looking back, actually, we were from a Pakistani Muslim, actually, a Mirpuri background. But if I can just try to put into context what you envisage or people understand in this day and age, over the last few decades, especially this last decade, I'm a son of immigrant parents, actually born and raised in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And of course, life looking back now was very different, and in light of what we've gone through, and I'm sure you'll talk me through that, and I will walk you through our journey.
Yeah.
And I often have these conversations with my children. But we grew up, we sort of were British, we took on Britishness, but as to conform to the Islamic way of life, it was incumbent upon us to go to a mosque.
Yeah.
We weren't going to a mega mosque at the time. I have a vivid memory of going to a mosque for a few hours every day, which I even at that time I didn't like, and for various reasons. But in a nutshell, it was a house that had been converted, or made into a madrasa, actually. So every day, growing up as a youngster, we would go along, my brother and I, and be taught this Arabic, this ancient sort of Arabic, the Qur'an, which didn't make a jot of difference to us or understanding.
Yeah.
And so it was just a rigmarole of going through the motions, and just sort of come Eid celebrations, Eid time, or Ramadan, the household would sort of obviously conform to fasting or whatever, and that's basically what I remember. But on the whole, we just went about our daily lives in between, sort of mingling with English friends, sort of West Indian friends, Irish friends, so we were a mixed bag. And what sort of united us was our sense of Britishness, if you like, our ID, as British people growing up in the community.
Okay, and so just some quick follow-on questions to that. What branch are you conscious of? What branch of Islam your family was bringing?
Yes, Sunni Islam. It's the
any particular legal school?
No, actually, my father was very liberal, tolerant, as all my uncles were. The wider family.
Yeah.
Often on a weekend, Friday evenings, sort of weekends, my father would be out actually at the local pub, whether he'd meet up with uncles or other men folk, from the extended family, or
so you come from it sounds like a pretty well integrated, generation.
Certainly at that time, actually, it was common knowledge. That'll be down the local pub in my household. You know, and whether a few uncles or relatives came along, and they'd all be sort of down the local pub. But on the whole, I don't think my dad liked anything better than to meet up with his friends, not necessarily sort of worked friends. He worked for British Leyland at the time, actually, and so, whenever I had to go and grab him, if somebody, for example, did come along or he was needed, often my mum would sort of say, go and get your dad, and I just would run down to the local pub and go in actually and discreetly sort of call him out, and these are my memories actually.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, it's a life that I think many English people can equate to. So tell us a little about your life as a Muslim. I get the feeling that for the most part when you were growing up it felt more cultural than a personal faith.
Yeah, actually I meant to use that word. It was more cultural.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what it was like as you were more matured. Did it remain cultural, or did it become a personal faith for yourself?
Actually, you sort of 15, 16. For some reason, you don't have to sort of. You're not then sort of bombarded or pushed to go to mosque, and then you really come away and just do your own thing, really. And nobody asks, why aren't you going to mosque to learn scriptures? It's sort of down to yourself. I had 1 or 2 friends. They might be deemed to be religious and sort of kept on sort of going regularly and taking it further, but on the whole most of us, when I say most of us, the local Pakistani Muslims like myself, a handful of similar scenario. They're more out sort of playing around and and actually just doing their thing, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And were you in that kind of second category, that kind of category?
Yeah, we like nothing.
Just getting on with your own life as a normal kid of that age and generation would have.
Yeah, certainly like nothing better, but than to meet up. As I say, not necessarily sort of fellow Pakistanis, but various mates and of various colour and creeds and sort of ethnic backgrounds and such like. But again, we all gelled, and we all, I think, saw ourselves, as British. That was the common sort of denominator, and actually there was never discussions of, oh, I'm a Muslim, or he's a Catholic, and he's a Christian.
People just got on.
We just got on with it actually, and we played and. Recreational stuff, and actually cricket, football, squash.
Are you more a cricket man or a football man?
I'm more of a squash man, to be honest with you.
Right, fair enough.
Yeah. I was absolutely dotty about squash.
Yeah. Fair enough. And how did you meet your beloved wife? Was it in the mosque, or was this after your conversion?
It was a typical arranged marriage.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that, because to a lot of our audience, the idea, I mean, to me, I understand what an arranged marriage is, and I have no problem with them at all. But tell us a little about how that worked, because that will be alien to a lot of people.
It was alien to me, to be quite frank with you. Totally alien. It really hit me like a ton of bricks, but actually my father... it was sort of early 88, possibly back end of 87. He'd gone out to Kashmir, Mirapur. My grandmother had died a year or 2 prior, and actually my father was in his late sort of 90s, and my father just felt to sort of semi-retire, look after him, take care of him actually, and I just remember my mother not particularly telling me exactly. But but really almost pushing me on the plane, saying, "Well, Dad, your dad wants you over there," and I had an inkling
What was going to happen?
what was going to happen,
Yeah.
and it did go against the grain, to be fair,
Mm.
actually. But as a subservient son, I just felt to do the best I could do. Bearing in mind, actually, my younger brother, Iftikhar, he was in a relationship with a lass, actually, and father was from a Sikh background, mother was Irish, actually, and so he'd kind of absconded, and I just, there was this sense of, well, he's kind of let the family down, because everything revolves around the family,
Yeah.
and this sort of code of family and family ethics and what
Family honour.
family, and so and I just felt, what, regardless of my sort of Britishness, actually I should just do the honourable thing, what was expected of me, as as an older son, actually. And so I went along in April of '88, and no sooner did I land, actually, in sort of 5-6 hours journey from Islamabad airport, sort of north through Pakistan, ended up in Mirpur and in the village, and they celebrations started, and actually it went on for every day for the best part of a week, actually, and then the following week, all I know is that I travelled to where my wife lived, and we were married.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it was a huge blow, actually. It really, I was numb. Yeah, the whole experience was alien, actually, and so, however.
But here you are, so many years later, with children.
Yes, so we have 6 amazing children. I thank God for them. They've been,
Thanks be to God.
and I will talk you through that as well, actually. But they've just been so remarkable, and but ultimately,
I mean, I mean, that in itself is a fascinating story, and it just goes to show, actually, that there are other models of creating family that the church should be considering, rather than the romantic model that we get from Hollywood. But I don't want to get sidetracked.
No.
I don't want to get sidetracked onto that.
And of course, very quickly, we can align it biblically as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a much more
Abraham
biblical.
and Isaac,
Absolutely.
that kind of
It's a
stuff.
far more biblical way of constructing families than what we're doing in the West as well.
Yeah, but I do see God's hand.
Yeah.
On this marriage, on my wife, because again, she's come to faith, and so we are a complete family.
Amen.
As a Christian family, actually.
Yeah.
And,
Right. Coming to that very thing in your life, and however long it was before you became just before you started seriously thinking about Christianity, what were your perceptions of Christianity as a Muslim?
My perceptions, actually,
As a Muslim, what were your perceptions?
it's a funny one, really, Bob, because you really didn't pay sort of that much attention, actually. I mean, you felt it was. I've got to confess, thinking back, even at the age of like sort of 5 or 6, reading these Ladybird books, I was riveted to this figure of Jesus in this lovely, picturesque book. This amazing man who could make the blind to see, the lame to walk, and so from an early age I was riveted to this figure of Christ, actually. And although I didn't have much dealings with church, because I didn't go to a CAV church or a Catholic church, a Catholic primary school, for example, and such like.
Yeah.
But we'd have the odd experience going to the Harvest Festival services.
The ones in church. I remember those.
Yeah, and I was naturally in awe of the kind of setting and such like.
So it was when that string, it was even weak back then, but it was certainly stronger than it is now. That sort of strong presentation of Christianity.
Yes, certainly, and of course
left its mark.
In Christmas time.
Yeah.
Easter and Christmas time.
Yeah.
Actually, there was just this remarkable sense of not only just festivity, but the theme of our Lord, actually, which resonated with me from that early age, actually.
So a stronger Christian culture was leaving an impression upon you.
Certainly, I would say that would be the case. Yeah.
That's something that the church should probably be thinking about. What was it then that put Christianity first on your radar in a serious sense, not like as a backdrop or as an echo that you were hearing in the surrounding culture, but what was it that kind of put Christianity as like in front of you, even if it was perhaps at a distance?
It was a life change of a school rebel, actually. Bless him, John, who I saw coming in at one time, and he had a history of absconding, quite a hard as nails character, rough around the edges. Actually, well, quite rough himself. Sort of tattooed and ear piercings and sort of Mohican haircut and just a
bit of a rocker.
Total rebel.
Yeah.
And a sort of real, a hard case, and often he would abscond and work in the markets, the rag sort of markets of Bullring city centre in Birmingham, and then being collared by the authorities, brought back. So this would go on for a few years, certainly as we were in secondary school. On one occasion he came, and I literally almost fell off my chair, because he was just transformed. It was civilized. The Mohican had gone, the ear piercings had gone, the tattoos were covered, civilized code, and reading the New Testament. Well, he had actual complete Bible in his carrier bag.
Wow.
And he had it in the classroom wrapped up, and every given opportunity he'll delve into it. And he was extremely approachable, and that whole transformation, it literally, not just myself, but a handful of other Pakistani lads, Muslim lads, because we weren't identified by this faith at the time, as we hear about it often in this day and age. And I was just so attracted and drawn to John, and we would talk for hours on end. And initially he said to me, I'm a born again Christian, and I said, well, what's a born again Christian? And we would talk, and he would sort of compound stuff and explain stuff and whatever. And then after a few weeks, he imparted to me a Gideon New Testament.
Yes, yeah.
Now, I do remember sort of looking back that we were taught that this is taboo, this is the lie of the devil, it's been altered, it's been doctored.
Is this what you've been taught in the past?
This is what we were, not necessarily taught it per se, but something which was picked up on.
Common currency.
Common currency, yeah.
Within the Islamic.
That's right, yeah. And sort of in the sort of natural jurisprudence of things,
Yeah.
And so, and I remember this taboo thing. I kind of thought, how do I now take this with me in my home? So I put it inside of my blazer, and I went away, went home.
That's interesting that you felt almost ashamed, embarrassed, or nervous about.
It literally was taboo. It was something that was ingrained in me. To say that we mustn't touch this thing.
Yeah.
It's sort of unholy, improper, if you like, for use that expression. And however, I was just so curious and just and then wanted to sort of see what John had. And anyway, I took it with me, actually, kind of broke every rule in sort of the household, but unbeknown to them, I kind of put it in my mattress and I would read it every evening.
So even your cultural Muslim father,
yeah,
God rest his soul, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yeah, he who used to go down to the bar and was integrated into society, even in his house, it was a taboo thing to have a New Testament.
Precisely. I mean, my father wasn't a model of a Muslim. He was just sort of maybe under the umbrella and conforming to that pattern, on the outside.
What I find interesting about that is the heaviness of the prejudice laying within the community, that even at a cultural level, it's still present. That this is a particularly well integrated family, a liberal, open minded, and yet
as most families were.
Yeah, exactly. But that attitude is still there.
It's
because there's a lot of people, particularly liberal progressives and liberal do-gooders, who think that the Islamic community has no prejudice against Christians at all.
No, on the contrary, they have every prejudice. And
I don't want to jump too deep into that because I know that's going to come later.
But if I can just wrap it up for you, Bobby, he actually, as a lot of, and even to this day, it's nominality. It's nominal.
Yeah.
Same can be said for the Catholic and Christians. It's an overall a nominal thing, unless you sort of obviously become more committed and such like.
Yeah.
But certainly my father, my uncles, all the men folk, they were nominal. I never saw them going to mosque to pray during the week, not even on a Friday at that time, growing up. Actually, but however, yes, but still, when it comes down to the Islamic conforms, it's a no-no. But I as I say, I used to read it with a vengeance of an evening, and I read the Gospels and the
just to help with the chronology. Was this before or after you got married?
This was before.
This was before. So this is what kind of put it first onto your radar. So give us an overview. Give us an overview and a sort of an overview of how you went from being a Muslim to being a Christian. Like, how would you sort of explain that process?
Okay, I would say very quickly that further to read the gospel message, the New Testament, actually, that I felt that in my heart of hearts I'd become a Christian. I'd accepted the Lord. I'd confessed because even though I recognised as a 15-year-old, despite going to mosque, whatever, I didn't live up to the mark, and I could see through the gospel message that I needed salvation. And so I confessed Christ, and I very quickly, I did meet with John's pastor, and the second most amazing thing that happened to me further to that was that this man was he was from a Sikh background, but he was no longer Sikh. So John's pastor was a Sikh, so he was the first convert I'd ever come across, and that blew me away as well, actually. And he would spend hours, we would talk, we would engage, he would expound the Bible, the New Testament, actually, so I would say I became a committed Christian, but because of the fear of my parents or family finding out, I didn't particularly confess openly. It seemed at that time I was the only convert from a Pakistani Mirpuri Muslim background in the whole world, actually. So you can deem me as a secret believer, if you like.
Yeah.
But very quickly, my mother put paid to that because she discovered the New Testament in my, while one evening, as mothers do, come along.
Yeah. Clean up your room.
And so we'll just see how her son is doing, actually. And I'd fallen asleep. It was sort of obviously late evening, and she'd found the New Testament sort of resting in my chest, and actually all I remember the following morning when I woke up, my mother sort of screaming and tearing the place down, and then threatening to go to my father. And my father, we're from the big men, I'm one of the smaller guys, actually, and so 6'4" big man ruling with a rod of iron, and that really instilled the fear of God in me. And all I can say to you is thereafter I stopped going to these fellowship meetings, stopped meeting with John, stopped meeting with other sort of Christian sort of friends I'd made, actually, and I didn't really rededicate my life until 1996.
Okay, so I mean that indicates something again of something that we're talking about on Soco Films, and we're trying to highlight that people want to deny, is the fact that there is this really embittered, entrenchant animosity towards the Christian faith, and this sense of shame that someone should own a New Testament and be a Muslim, or be reading the New Testament. Is that fair to characterise it like that? See it like that, or Is it not shame but anger? What do you think it's rooted in that?
Again, going by my own personal experience, it's rooted in the fact that it is a common held belief in Islam, and it's sort of poured out and shouted out that the Bible is a lie, actually, and it's been doctored and altered.
Yeah.
And one mustn't touch it, actually. So that was my personal, and it's, to this day, it still goes on, and probably much more so now than it did growing up in the sort of early 70s.
Do you think that really explains the reaction? Like, if it was just a case of this is not a trustworthy book, then, but the sense of sort of outrage that you're describing seems to be deeper than just this is not a trustworthy book, but coming from somewhere else.
It's just a commonly held opinion, belief, which is then obviously it's a taboo.
Yeah, I guess it's why is it a taboo that, you know, what?
I think for me as a convert, it's fear of actually recognising the truth for what it is, really, you know, and so. And again, we can talk about we've suffered as a family terrorism.
Yeah, we'll come to that.
And so it's just simply ingrained in Islam that it deems himself as a superiority type religion, that you know, they are Allah's best, and they are.
So to be anything less than a Muslim is to become something worse.
It's to become something worse.
So, and also, what your story highlights that even way back when. So this was what, 70s, 80s.
We're talking early 80s.
So
81, 82.
Even then, the church wasn't in a position to support people that were showing interest in the Christian faith, because you obviously evidently did have interest, but your family was able to shut that down.
As I say, there was no thinking of, oh, well, I'll go to John, or I'll go to Pastor Joseph Batoy, the deceased pastor, as I mentioned earlier. Actually, he will then obviously bring me in. He will safeguard me, shield me. There was, you couldn't see past the family.
Yeah.
And actually, as I say, you just didn't know. Also, well, you're never ingrained in the Sharia. I didn't know what Sharia was till my sort of late 20s.
Yeah.
It's a blind leap of faith. You go along, and as I say, you learn and taught the Quranic scriptures, which don't mean anything, you know, and there's no such thing as a translation in the mosques or whatever.
So you're reading this Arabic?
It's Arabic. It's ancient Arabic that you don't.
You don't actually know what you're reading.
Not one jot of it.
You just reciting it.
You just recite it. You learn it. Actually, you go through the rigmarole of prayer or Ramadan, actually fasting, Eid celebration, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So but again, it's a lot of it's cultural, as opposed to yes, there is a religious aspect to it, but there's also a very deep cultural. They lend itself hand in hand. It's so intertwined, you can't separate one from the other. I've had Pakistanis stop saying Assalamu alaikum, the usual sort of Arabic greeting, because as far as they're concerned, you know, you're
it's interesting they greet you in Arabic rather than either in English or even
but as
the language of your homeland.
But as somebody who's come out of
the homeland.
Yeah, as somebody who's come out of Islam, that all stops.
Yeah.
And it's good morning or hello, you know, actually. So it's a clear case of you're in or you're out. There is no middle ground. There is no tolerance. There is no acceptance. Because again, we can talk about this.
We'll come to that. So you talked about rededicating your life a bit later on. So just give us a summary of how you ended up rededicating your life.
Well, actually, if I could just quickly finish off and then bring you on to that point. That so after I stopped fellowship, I think we use this word backslide, which I didn't know what it was until later on when I dedicated my life, actually. But so we fall back into the world, actually, and so here we are now in 1988. So got married, settled down. A few children came along, and then very, very sadly, I lost a brother, Iftikhar, who was a year younger than me. He died very suddenly, actually, and my father was backwards and forwards to Pakistan all these years, and then actually I had to break the news to him. And so what happened in a nutshell, I escorted or took Iftikhar's body because my father requested that I bring his casket to Mirpur, yes, for burial, because they have a family burial and such like, you know. I have that's a deep regret, but that's anyway actually. But the thing is that I then went at that time. As I say, he passed away in '96, and while I was there, you appreciate it was it's pain like I never knew before, and actually on the day that when we landed and eventually some hours later got to our destination, and then they were ready and willing to prepare to bury him there and then, and I made a confession of faith. I was just going to rededicate my life to the Lord.
You did that in Mirpur?
In Mirpur, yeah.
Did you do that just personally?
No,
or did you
just
meet some
personally.
Christians?
I asked the Lord. As far as I know, there is Christians as I know it now, but even when I was there, I wouldn't have known any Christians whatsoever. Especially as you know, it's classed as Islamic country, and then in the villages and such like in Mirpur, it's staunch Muslims, and I believe there are tiny fragments of Christian communities dotted around, but it's something which I wouldn't have had that connection, you know.
Yeah.
So I to myself, and I said, well, Lord, you know, it's just a matter of time before I'm 6 foot under, and I've been running from you all this time, and I just want to rededicate my life.
So that early experience that you'd had in your teenage years had never actually left you?
It never left me. Now I always
it was always there.
It was always there. I always realised that the Lord Jesus was Son of God, and there's only one way to God the Father, and that was through the Lord, and salvation was through Christ. And so despite my own kind of wretched state, if you like, and sort of falling away into the world, I always held on to that faith.
How did family and friends react to this?
Well, you appreciate I didn't mention to anybody in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Actually, and when I came back after 3 weeks after burying my brother, who was 29 at the time, that we'd been living in Bradford since 1990, and we're now talking 96. And I had 2 young children, 4 and 2 respectively, and so even to my wife, I didn't mention to her. I just sort of kept it to myself. And I remember at work, actually, there was a young man who used to always we tried to engage and talk, and he was a committed Christian, and it tried to invite me over a period of time to come to his local fellowship, and I'd sort of duck and dive. But as I say, I was very broken actually, and the pain is indescribable. The loss of losing my brother actually, and I was very empty and needed fellowship. And I said to Richard, "Look, Richard, you know, I've been a Christian for many years, since the age of 15. But it's a long story. But however, I'd like to join in fellowship." And he was absolutely elated, and I can't describe to you his excitement, and literally running around the room actually. But in there, I started going to that fellowship with Richard, my work colleague, and being a younger man actually, I used to sort of see him quite regularly thereafter. But it was a few weeks later, and for the life of me, and to this day I don't know, that my wife actually confronted me and said, "You're going to church." And that really kind of, as I say, blew me away. I just couldn't understand how she because she grew up in a village, and there were no churches round about. She wouldn't have had any idea what Christianity was or who Christians were and such like. Even Pakistani Christians, which I came to know sort of a year or two after I'd kind of rededicated my life, and I'm now 30. And so I said to her, yes, I am. And my wife's immediate reaction was to literally yank one of the kids out of my lap and pull my boy to her side and say, I don't want anything to do with you. Don't come near me.
Wow.
And you appreciate that was, really tough. And, I was absolutely numb. And I remember just sat there and sitting there and saying, Lord, well, you know how it is. I'm trying to get over the pain of losing my brother, and you saw it fit to take his life, and but to lose my wife and my children, I don't know what to do, and how to go from here. And it was thereafter actually that literally we were living separate lives actually for a few weeks, and then it's obviously showed on my persona, and one of the ladies at the fellowship approached me and said, Nissar, is everything all right? And I said, well, no, not really. And when I explained to her, she said, look, is there any way that if we would love to invite you. My husband used to be a missionary to China, and we've 6 children, and would you like to come to the home? Would you feel that your wife would come along with you, and let's see, the Lord might just work through, sort of make her realise that we're not all white devils and such like. And so I said, okay, and I went about then trying to get my wife, who really and truly, if you think about it, from 88, so it was now sort of 8 years in the country, but she's still been so preoccupied with being a wife and then a mother, so I hadn't had much interaction with English folk, apart from one or two of my friends, who she might see me mingling with from time to time. And then we did take, she took up the invite of this lady, and she had a lovely time actually. And then she said, in the course of that conversation towards the end, she said, would you like to meet so and so? They're Pakistani Christians, and to me that was music to my ears, because believe it or not, I was quite very ignorant. And looking back, things are suppressed, and I didn't know that there were such a thing as Pakistani Christians, because even at that point, would you believe, I thought I was the only one. And so I took up her offer and of meeting them, and I really felt that would go a long way, because obviously culturally my wife is from a Pakistani sort of heritage, and was born and raised in Pakistan. And that was a fruitful meeting, and then they said, look, we meet as a Christian fellowship, Pakistani Christian fellowship, once a month. We're few in number, but we do gather, and we have other people, non-Pakistanis mixing with us as well. And so we went, and actually, my wife was deep in thought, and I think the Spirit of the Lord has just been sort of touching her, because I remember then we were invited by the pastor to attend the Easter service, and then I went away, set about saying to my wife, look, the pastor's and I explained what the pastor was, and he invited you to come along, and she took up that invitation. And at the end, when the altar call was given, and I looked around, I thought maybe my wife's gone to see the kids that were in the creche. And next thing I saw, in this packed room, my wife confessing Christ and just giving her heart to the Lord. And and actually, so the Lord had really touched her actually, and she said to me after that she had really prayed, and was really at a crossroads, was really fearful, uncertain, a lot of emotions crossed her mind, with family and all sorts of consequences. But she really felt that the Lord had led her to commit her heart and faith in Christ.
Yeah.
So that was a very emotional and wonderful day for us as a family.
And what happened next? Once, because I'm guessing obviously your family were baptised. What happened? But how was this sort of received within the wider community? What happened?
At that
next?
you're quite right. So we started going to church or fellowship, Christian fellowship regular, and actually, my very close Pakistani friend, who I saw as a family friend as well, actually, and I'm sure he felt the same way. I then said to him, "Well, look, just to let you know, I've embraced Christianity." And his immediate response was that I should never come to his door ever again.
Wow.
Actually, and that.
And this is someone you considered almost like family.
Absolutely, I loved and respected him, and he was a dear friend. And likewise, he welcomed me into the family setting. He was from a big extended family.
Yeah.
In his own words, he said, "I have 5 brothers," and he had older sisters as well. And he said, "Nissar, you were a 6th brother to me."
Yeah.
But he said, we sat and ate from the same plate, but you've forsaken the religion of my forefathers. And I said, "Well, with respect, dear brother, your forefathers, our forefathers, if you like, they can't give me salvation, and I have this truth." And he said, "You're not to come to my door again." So I walked away from that, never saw him again. And in actual fact, he's then mentioned it. And they say in any Pakistani sort of communities, close-knit community, whether you're in Bradford, Birmingham, London, wherever you might be, and actually the word seems to have gone out like wildfire. And then as a result, you are shunned, maligned, despised. My wife started getting very negative comments and remarks at the school playground by some of the women, Pakistani Muslim women.
Strangers?
No, she knew them very well as a fellow school parent over the years, and they seem to have this audacity and anger to turn around and say, "Well, why are you not wearing a blouse or miniskirt?" and stuff like that, actually. And my wife was...
So in their minds, becoming a Christian meant wearing a miniskirt?
That's right. I've been sort of somehow loose or something, actually. And my wife said, "Well, hold on, you're born, raised here. I'm born, raised in Pakistan." And I think they were referring to her dress, the usual sort of shalwar and kameez, as they call it, So in essence, so they had contempt and would turn their back, and there were issues there, actually, so.
But it didn't just stay at comments, did it?
No, because
how did it escalate?
It then the local young men, lawlessly with impunity, are then sort of swearing and shouting and making all, you're referred as a kufr, and
as you're walking in the street,
as walking the street. Actually, my wife suffered it, my children suffered it.
And this is in Bradford.
This is in Bradford, in cars, and in the neighbourhood. More to the point, these young men, seeing them grow up, and now young men, and just taking upon themselves to verbally abuse, evolves to physical confrontations, where you're physically jostled, pushed around, spat at, and then it then develops into criminal damage to your property, where we've had cars torched, cars rammed, drive-by brickings, and we, nothing has prepares you for this, actually. And so it was.
So all of this escalated in roughly, just like in a word, roughly what time frame from you're the first person finding out you were Christian to the first brick going through your car window. What type of time scale are we talking about?
Well, we're talking sort of a year or so.
Within 1 year.
Within 1 year, yeah.
We went from I've become a Christian to you having your property vandalised, being spat on in the street, being pushed around, being insulted in 1 year.
But basically terrorised.
In the midst of all of this, what support did you receive from the police?
No support.
None.
None.
Hate crime? Did they? I mean, I don't know if hate crimes existed as a concept at this point. It might be. But
no, they didn't deem
but
it.
Still, it would have been criminal.
Yeah.
What you were going through. But
the police have, through our experience, have turned a blind eye, despite the fact that a car's been after it was torched, rammed.
Yeah.
With one of the neighbours, the young men, who
were these people known to you?
Yeah, they were neighbours.
So you could name them.
I could name them. I reported it at the time.
And the police did nothing.
They did nothing. They went through the motions, but came back with nothing actually.
The police did nothing.
They done absolutely nothing actually. And
any investigation?
Or
did they just kind of wash their hands?
They kind of go through the rigmarole, but it comes to nothing, and you're just left sort of dangling, and you're in no man's land, and you're in complete and utter fear of life, safety. It got so bad after some years of going through it actually that they even torched the house next door, which was vacant.
Yeah.
And one of the ringleaders waited till I came from work. They know your comings and goings, and said to me, we've torched your car. We're going to burn you at your house. Why don't you leave?
So they were literally trying to drive you out of Bradford.
This was their exact aim, and they made no bones about it. And I expressed the exact words to this sergeant chap.
What's his name? Do you remember?
No, I don't. But it's on record actually. But I said to the sergeant, look, I've been threatened, and they're going to. I've had my house, my car torched. Now they're going to burn me up my home. And they started giving me facts and figures. And no, this very rarely happens. And anyway.
So the police that will smash people's door down for twittering the wrong series of words are recording all of this harassment in full knowledge of who the victims is, and they couldn't even put together an investigation where they wait outside or in some other property to capture the evidence to make an arrest. Nothing at all. And we this sergeant, his words to me were, you don't belong there. My gosh.
And
he said that?
Yeah, he told me to stop being a crusader and move out the area. And
oh my gosh.
And that was echoing several officers in several incidents.
So the police was to blame, the police attitude was to blame the victim?
To blame the victim, and also to somehow suggest that I go and live in a middle class area, that I didn't belong here actually.
Oh
so,
wow.
Yeah, it's absolutely appalling actually.
Yeah.
It was literally frontline in the trenches stuff, and the police weren't.
But this then escalated into an attempt to take your life, didn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, I first and foremost, or
am I skipping ahead of it?
Well, no. Well, I'd like to say that I could talk to you. I could be here till midnight and tell you, instant after instant, what my family was subjected to. We were, in a nutshell, we were terrorised, and had acts of terrorism against us, against our home. The time that they did torch in October of 2002, actually they broke into the house, the vacant house next door, and actually they deliberately set the house on fire in the hopes that it would spread to my home.
Yeah.
And that was a very terrifying experience, where we had pungent black smoke come into the home, and the kids were hysterical, and the fire was it was blazing sky high through the attic window and such like. And fortunately for us, that the fire station wasn't too far away, and 4 fire engines attended and sort of put a stop to that. But it's the trauma I can't express to you.
Yeah, it must be terrifying to have the knowledge that people are literally trying to do you harm, and then you look towards the state authorities that are supposed to protect you, and they have all the laws, and they have the resources, and they have the ability, and they essentially turn around and tell you it's your fault and you should just clear off.
That's right. This is exactly how it was, and so there were numerous instances, time and time again. You lived in this deep state of anxiety, day in, day out, actually, and they were lawless, and they'd done it with such impunity that you could only liken this kind of stuff to say what's happening to the minorities or Pakistani Christians.
So it was as if the persecution that Pakistani Christians...
We were suffering the same fate.
You were suffering it in Bradford.
In Bradford. And I then done my best to appeal to the local imams, the local mosques, who all knew me over the years that I lived, and such like.
And what was their response?
Their response was kind of lukewarm, and then we will. They're out of our control. They're out of our jurisdiction. They made every excuse, but they didn't. They knew who these culprits were. I named them. They were their local young men.
So they were attending the mosque, were they? Do you know?
Possibly on Friday prayers, but
maybe.
But yeah.
Okay.
However, I appeal to every kind of leader, community leader, imam in the community, and it came to nothing, and nor was I ever visited by them actually. And so, after several years of going through this, making a stance, because I felt, hold on, this is not Pakistan. I don't live in an Islamic country. I'm not in the Middle East. This is a free democratic country, which has a law system. But it came to a point where we were left absolutely no alternative, and then is it the expression moonlighting? Yeah. We actually left. We moonlighted, and we left our property.
You were forced out your own home.
We were forced out of our own home in sort of like June 2006, and we relocated to the property, which I will discuss with you, where we've again been vacated by 10 armed police.
So you moved home.
Yeah, 2006.
And what I mean, because I'm conscious of time. Is it a case that the harassments started again, or?
Well, we moved to this. We relocated in June 2006, and we set about rebuilding our lives. And again, you appreciate the distress, the trauma. The children were pretty young, actually, and so my oldest boy was 10 at the time, and sort of 2 years younger apiece as you drop down, actually. And so I was then approached, so about 2 years after being into this new property, I was approached by Dispatch's documentary, and they said, look, we've come to understand that there is this terrible situation with converts, and there's life and death scenario in this country, and would you like to contribute? And I said, well, I feel very passionate about this. We've gone through these terrible experiences where I've had 3 cars written off. One's torched outside my home, another one rammed outside my home and written off, and the third one, it was pounced on by 20, 30 young men, these jobbers, dancing on the roof from the bonnet, kicking all the doors, and they wrote it off. And the daily threats to our lives and intimidation. So yeah, I want to speak out. So as a result of contributing to that Dispatch documentary called On the Holy War, the clan Pakistani family a few doors away, who own 3 joint houses and still doing it, they then took it upon themselves to then again, like in the first instance, completely, from saying good morning and having all these conversations, to completely turn their back on us, shunning us. But not that it doesn't just stop there. You wouldn't really mind if they felt not to sort of speak to you again.
Yeah, just ignore them.
But they then obviously make a point of showing this utter contempt. They then malign you in the whole area. He's a kafir, he's an infidel. He's working for the American missionaries. And so all these rumours, malicious rumours, spread in and around the whole area.
This is the kind of thing that they throw at speakers, at Christian speakers at Speakers Corner. Oh, you're paid missionaries.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, we get the same. Now we get to see what the tone of that comment is.
Yeah, it's the case of every kind of evil, deception possible to then malign you amongst the so-called Muslim community, and these are my own sort of Pakistani fellow countrymen, if you like.
So they're villainising you.
They villainise me actually, and then
what?
And then it carries it. It goes up to the CV school where the children were, and they started becoming victims through their friends who would disassociate themselves from them, call them all manner of names, say to them, "Our parents have said we mustn't sit next to you. You're a Christian. You're a kafir." And so the kids started suffering terribly in the CV school. And I personally, myself, on occasion, would get these terrible remarks and intimidation, sort of by way of a jostle here or a nudge there, and it becomes very precarious for not only your own safety, but your children's sort of welfare. And of course the head teacher doesn't want to tackle it. It becomes a big political issue, and of course in the end I was forced to pull my children out of a CV school, primary school.
So the head teacher of the school didn't want to tackle it because it was too much of a hot potato?
Too much of a hot potato, because obviously more and more became this particular CV school in Manningham, in Heaton rather, in Bradford, became predominantly Pakistani sort of attendance by their pupils, and of course it almost becomes like a mob rule situation again.
During this time, what support were you receiving from individual Christians of your fellowship or individual Christians in the area?
No support, actually. And then
were you telling them about your situation?
I was telling them about the situation.
And what was their reaction?
Well, we had a meeting with the then Bishop, David James, in 2005.
Yeah.
This is after they torched my home in 2005.
Yeah.
So, the bishop wasn't happy that I was even there. I had to remind him that his advisor, this academic, self-proclaimed or whatever, expert on Islam, he invited me there, and Philip Lewis, and he asked me, what do you want me to do? And then one of the people from my camp, who I took along, and said, "I think Nissar sees as a leader of Christendom," to which he looked quite baffled by, and then he said, "Would you welcome converts to your church? Would you welcome Nissar and his family to the church?" And he said yes. In the same breath he said, "That is to say no."
He said yes, but that is
in the same breath he said, "That's to say no," and I was completely beside myself. I was shocked at his statement.
So Bishop of the Church of England, he's saying he didn't want you.
He didn't want us to
at his church.
And then he followed up by saying the reason for that is we don't have resources and houses to look after them. And at that time I was involved with the black church, Jamaican church, and the pastor that was with me, he leapt to his feet. He was livid with the man, and he said, "Well, all you're fit for is appeasing the Muslims." And we left, actually, and it was a terrible betrayal. That's the first betrayal, because I did see the established Church of this land and bishops as the how can I say, our guardians, our protectors, actually.
Well, bishops are supposed to be leaders of the Christian community.
Yeah, I did see him as a leader of Christendom, if I can put it that way.
But I think the reality is that many of the bishops, particularly bishops of the Church of England, see themselves more as civil servants of public civic society.
Having opportunities then to sort of continue to try to get them to support us, and then different bishops moving in and out. So Nick Baines came in after David James, actually, and literally sort of 8 minutes to 10 minutes walk from the Bishop's Palace from my sort of front door. He's another one that didn't intervene, support in any way. And then prior to just after my attack, actually, this new one, Toby Howarth, another appalling. I've got to say on record, I see them as Judases. That's they've betrayed myself, my family, and they've betrayed us as converts.
Now, because we are going to publish this, I have to state for the record that these are obviously Nissar's allegations, and we will give each of these bishops, if we can reach them, the opportunity to respond and invite them to interview and to talk about these situations. But you're obviously speaking from your sense of looking to these people for help.
Yes.
And getting nothing from them except, I'm guessing, platitudes?
Nothing at all. It is, as I say, we've been heartbroken. I've even had Justin Welby in a chance meeting at the Focus Convention back in August of 2014, I believe it was. He dismissed. I actually was talking to Bishop Josiah. Is he the head of GAFCON?
I don't know.
I believe he's the head of GAFCON. And Justin Welby actually jumped onto the podium at this place in Camber Sands, the Focus conference that they have in a big top actually, and the chap, the Alpha course, remind me his name, Bob.
Nicky Gumbel.
Nicky Gumbel. Yeah. So somebody invited us there, and just to get my family out of the trenches, I went along and got my kids out, and some of them were really struggling as teenagers now, and we were under siege. It became very, very dangerous and precarious towards the end. And while I was talking to this Bishop Josiah, explained to him the failure of the bishops in Bradford and us as converts, and he genuinely was gobsmacked that Justin Welby deliberately came over and he interrupted our conversation and began to sort of pull this chappie and lead him away. And I said, Mr. Welby, I need a few minutes of your time. I need to discuss with you what we're suffering as converts and what we've gone through in Bradford and the failure of the Anglican Church. And he dismissed me with a wave of his hand, and yes, we know all about that, he said, and almost with contempt, and we're doing all we can. And the more I impressed upon him to give me a few minutes, the worse the situation became, and he physically led this Bishop Josiah away from me, knowing I was having a conversation with him. And as I tried to get him just to engage with me, some of his people blocked me, and away he went. Actually.
So what? I mean,
And Toby Howarth has gone on to. It's all to do with well, I've come to know these people as careerists, as you say, as politicians.
When did the media pick up on your situation?
Well, the media going back sort of around about 2000, and at that time it was really spiralling big. But you appreciate, Bob, as a family man with a young family, going through trauma, going through these daily fears and stresses and strains. I wasn't in a position to be interviewed with and that particularly knowledgeable on apostasy and such like. But anyway, I kind of refrained from giving sort of full stories and the full picture. But then, as I say, as time has gone on, with the political correctness of the age and the way things have been turned around, and Muslims have become a protected class, despite the fact that they are the perpetrators, and in our respect, concerning the apostasy law, I've come to realise the most cardinal sin in Islam, and you'll understand there's 4 Islamic schools of thought, or Islamic jurisprudence, and one of the Shiite, Al-Jafri. I would like to say on record right now, and people can go away and look at this, In Islam, in black and white, it is agreed upon these 5 Islamic schools of thought, the ulema, that apostasy is worthy of death. You have 8 countries where it's a capital punishment.
They did try to take your life, didn't they?
Yes.
There was a physical attack.
Yeah, I told the police that this clan family were instigating an attack on me back in August of 2015. They dismissed it like everything else they've dismissed for all these years. And and of course, under the cover of darkness in the fall, as I got into my car, I ended up almost being bludgeoned to death.
Bludgeoned to death, crowbars, baseball. I saw the video cam,
Yeah.
it was captured. Someone came and rescued you. Who was that?
It was a couple of Polish neighbours several doors up the road
Yeah,
who happened to be outside, fortunately for me,
yeah.
because I wouldn't be here to tell the tale. They came running to my aid, and of course these cowards had then fled. Actually, I spent 11 days in hospital. I subsequently ended up being kneecapped and suffered a broken hand trying to protect my head from being bludgeoned in.
And
The police called it an assault, by the way. It was all played down. And so,
wasn't a hate crime.
at that point,
Or was not
at
hate
that
crimes?
point, this chief inspector, this Mr. Reese Cooper.
It wasn't an attempt to murder.
No,
Just an assault
they
with baseball
just
bats and crowbars.
just
to
an
the head.
assault. Yeah, they called it.
Because obviously.
He took it upon himself then to go back with all the previous incidents and label it as a hate crime.
Yeah. He took. Who did this?
The chief inspector, this Mr. Reese Cooper.
Well, Lord where Lord is due, you know.
But prior to that, it wasn't classed as a religious hate. They refused to log it as a religious hate crime.
Yeah.
And acknowledged that what we were suffering was hate crime, and they failed to understand. They'd rejected this thing about apostasy completely.
In summary, then, to the bishops of the Church of England and to the establishment, what would you like to say to them?
I would like to say to them, shame on them. They are a disgrace to their dog collars, actually, and their titles, and they are weak and pathetic, actually. And so, where they should have stood with us, and of they're also their weak stance on apostasy, and which they've never been outspoken about. And let's be fair. When you have Asia Bibi, which we all know about, who suffered 10 years of incarceration, 8 of which of solitary confinement, who's actually, and they've never spoken out in all these years against the terrible affliction and sufferings of our Christian brothers and sisters in Pakistan, under the terrible blasphemy law. I have absolutely no faith in them whatsoever. And again, their agenda is interfaith and is false, like you say.
So,
ecumenism.
you feel, am I right in summarising that you feel that for political correctness and for, a false ecumenism, both church and the established Church of England and the state found your suffering to be a nuisance to the narrative that was guiding the way their institutions were working, police and church?
I couldn't have said it better myself, Bob. We are a complete anathema.
Yeah.
And they've been complicit, if anything.
But one group has helped you, I believe. There have been Christians that have reached out to help you. I know when I first heard about your story, years before I got involved in Soco films, I tried to reach out to find you.
Thank you so much.
And I know other Christians have reached out, and I think it's important to give them an honourable mention. So who were that?
Certainly. It's been Barnabas Fund, Patrick Suckdale. If it wasn't for that dear man, I wouldn't be under a roof.
Yeah.
They supported us at the time of my attack. It took me several months to get on my feet, and they were amazing. God bless him. God bless Barnabas Fund and all the staff.
Yeah.
And the various people that pulled together to get me and my family out of a life and death situation, actually.
Yeah.
Can I just mention very quickly, Bob, we have had a high level meeting some weeks ago with Lord Pearson in the House of Lords, to raise the apostasy issue in this country. That why somebody who's born and raised in this country as a British subject has been under the cosh of apostasy, and why many thousands of converts, ex-Muslims, are suffering the same fate potentially through sort of threats and the fear of losing their lives, that they are living these underground lives in fear, actually. And so, and Lord Pearson has raised these questions in the House. I believe it was the 2nd of December. Okay. And I want to ask and request very humbly by your good people that are watching this, actually, or will be, that if they can go online, punch in the legalised apostasy petition. Yeah. And if they can read through that, actually get their local MPs, councillors, imams, bishops, church leaders, to get behind this. And if they needed to send it to me, print it off, send it to me via Facebook, so we can start now raising this deception that's gone on for over 4 decades. Multiculturalism has failed because, as a British subject, I needed full protection of government authorities and church, and we didn't have it, actually. And so it's taken an enormous amount of grit and grace on the part of my wife and my children, us as a family, who have suffered this, and words don't do me justice. Okay, and I think it's very, very important that people do recognize that Islam, my own community, my Pakistani countrymen, have for over 4 decades hidden this agenda of apostasy. It's very much there, and it affects many tens of thousands of ex-Muslims.
Well, as I say, it's a shame that we've run out of time, because I think that the end of this interview has been a bit compressed, when it would have been nice to sort of pad it out, but we are sadly out of time.
I understand.
So I want to thank you very much for inviting us to your home, giving us your time. I do want to mention that we are going to publicise a way that if you want to help this family, who are true confessors of the faith and have bore their cross in a very literal way, emotionally and physically, and have suffered for it, we will highlight how you can do that. There is it's a GoFundMe page.
Yeah, that was set up by a supporter last September, actually, Bob.
Yeah,
and we're very grateful to him.
And how can they find it? What's it called?
It's a GoFundMe page, and of course they would put in my name, Nissar Hussein, thereafter.
Nissar Hussein on GoFundMe.
Yeah.
And it was set up by someone after you were assaulted, I believe.
Actually, it was
when you had to flee your home for the second time.
Yeah, it was. When we left our home, but it was
for the second time.
Yes, it was done last September, not the time of the attack. We're not motivated by money, but you appreciate, Bob, what's happened is that. As some people now who are under police protection, and of course suffering traumas, what I call the fallout, which has been immense in many respects. I have a house that's not sold yet. There's been this terrible consequence and fallout of what we've gone through, actually, and so I'm deeply humbled by you mentioning that. Thank you so much, Bob.
Well, I think it's important that as Christians we rediscover what it means to stand in solidarity with one another and to stand up for our own community, and we can see clearly that there is a real need for that to come from the ground, because it's certainly not coming from the so-called leadership. But I want to close in saying that and I'm sure many Christians who are watching this around the world are going to be praying for the full restoration of you, your circumstance. We find your testimony to be inspiring, and it's important to remember that it isn't just the testimony of the man sitting in front of you, it's the whole family that's not on camera. and we've had a chance to meet a few of them, and they're a lovely family. They're well worthy of your prayer and your support and your encouragement. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. God bless you. God bless you.
Take care.
God bless. God bless.
Peace with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're just on our way back from meeting with Nissar. We're on the train, hence the rockety filming. It was literally very tight in terms of getting the train back. I mean, coming from that interview, my reflections are firstly how disturbing it is to hear the fact that the police, and now that we know of so many other accounts of these kinds of things, that the police are literally just wash their hands of Nissar's situation, that they blame the victim of harassment, intimidation, assault and attempted murder, it would seem, and that their attitude is rather than stand up for the law, is to cower to the mob and to blame the one individual rather than face up to the fact, something that we've spoken about on our Soco films before, the deep Christophobia that exists within the Muslim community and emanates out from certain sections of that community. I think what is also deeply distressing from Nissar's story is the total incompetence and cowardice of church leadership, that rather than create the structures, institutions, culture, attitude and real sense of Christian solidarity to support people like Nissar, people like Mohammed Fiaz, and the others who we know of but have not yet necessarily caught on film, who've become Christians from a Muslim background, they would rather just brush their plight under the carpet, because that's easier than falling out with the establishment and standing up for your own community. This kind of leadership is not leadership that we need in the UK. We need better leadership, particularly within the church in the West, which on the whole sees itself as civil servants rather than as true leaders of the Christian community. They're ineffective and pointless. But I think finally the other thing that comes out of this story is the incredible determination and courage of that whole family, who are true confessors of the faith. They have suffered for the faith, they have carried their cross daily and have bore the wounds of Christ as white martyrs of the faith. And as Christians, we need to rediscover what it means to stand in solidarity with those who are suffering for the faith, to stand with them in their suffering. And standing with our brothers and sisters in their suffering is not a reason to just give platitudes that don't lead to anything. It has to be followed by real actions of support. Because there are literally thousands of converts from Islam in this country, many of who are suffering for that choice, and they're suffering quietly because no one wants to tell their story, but we want to tell your story. So if you are a convert from Islam and you want to share your story, we can protect your identity in that we can blur your face, and we can ensure that no one can recognize you unless they were doing it through your voice. But if you want to tell your story, we want to hear it. And I would ask people to ask themselves, what kind of country are we living in when a Christian family has been driven out of Bradford because of the deeply rooted prejudice of others, and that has become acceptable? Why are we not outraged by that? Why should we not be outraged by that? The liberal do-gooders who accuse people of, Islamophobia for highlighting these things. I mean, just take the time to look at yourselves in the mirror and realise what you are attempting to mask over. Realise what you are attempting to sideline and to make acceptable through your rhetoric that seeks to suppress the facts as we have recorded today. I would encourage you to think again, because you have been misguided. And for those of you who are Muslims who, like Nissar when he was younger, like Muhammad Fiaz, who are looking at the New Testament and you're asking, is this true? Well, the answer is yes. And there are many people who are saying yes to Christ and saying yes to the truth, and you can be one of them. It is not the case that you have to live a lie. You can come out, and it is only when enough people come out that this sense of fear will be broken. And that will present a challenge to the establishment. That will present a challenge to the state that on camera tells everyone that they believe in tolerance and that they believe in standing up for minority rights. But in reality, increasingly the evidence suggests that they are selective about which minority rights they're willing to stand up for.